I am deeply afraid that this normal world we live in is only as normal as our conditioning has taught us. Wake up. I am not a Star Wars fan. It took me years to get through the original trilogy. I watched Revenge of the Sith before I watched Return of the Jedi. I remember watching my brother play Battlefront 2 as a kid, but never played myself. I never got into the Clone Wars show. I played maybe 10 or so hours of Star Wars Fallen Order, and I could tell you that that game is really great, but I probably will never download it again. I was intrigued to watch The Mandalorian Season 1. It was kind of what I wanted from the universe, a kind of non-referential side story about a new character that wasn't extremely integral to the entire galaxy. I never watched Season 2 because all I've heard about the show is that it took a complete 180. Season 1 was sort of a one-hit wonder. Generally, Star Wars, especially the films, are very hit or miss despite the universe, the world building being iconic and inspiring. With the success of certain types of Star Wars stories, we have in return gotten a plethora of copies trying to milk the concept dry. This is entertainment in a nutshell. Someone creates a work of art and a corporation redundantly resells the idea until the next sucker comes along and makes something actually worthwhile. Star Wars Andor is that thing. I'm not a Star Wars fan, and Andor is the best live-action show I have ever seen. I must preface this video with a warning. I will be spoiling Andor. I urge you to watch this show in any way you can, by the way, before seeing this video. Even if you don't connect in the way I do to Andor, it's still extremely entertaining and its themes are worth observing. You've been warned. When Luthen showed up at the end of episode 10, the filmmakers executed the scene in a deliberate but surprising way. With my conditioning of Star Wars media and the tropes of American television, I had my worries when Luthen was shrouded in darkness, leaning over an abyss, cloaked in black. I had a feeling for just a second that a lightsaber might slowly burn itself into the dark aether, that Luthen was actually a part of the Empire, a plot twist that would have ruined Andor. Instead, what I got was one of the most impactful speeches I've ever seen on television. The choice to make Luthen emerge from the darkness, mentally torturing what was thought to be an Imperial loyalist, all made sense. You don't need me to repeat his lines, his poetic rapture of emotion, of ego that only we and Lonnie Jung will hear. Either his speech is engraved in your mind, at least the force of it, or you've seen the many video essays mentioning it already. And there is a reason for why so many video essays bring up this scene. It is basically the thesis of Andor condensed into 1 minute. It is the anger, the frustration, the relevance of Andor, the justification for its existence as a product of a monopoly. Andor is the antithesis of your average Disney product, of your overworked VFX artist contracted for Marvel Studios, of empty themes and empty respect for communities, of old cinema's demise, of the corporatization of what defines humanity, art. Andor is corroded by hypocrisy, yet channels it into an emotion I understand. In a world of evil, compromise is inevitable, and so I am condemned
to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them.
Art, under the contractual weight of a corporate organism, a virus spreading across humanity, is justified, highlighted, and challenged by some writer praying his intent isn't revised into obscurity.
So what do I sacrifice? Everything!
Subvert, extend, deepen, but never retread, unless absolutely necessary. Andor is a new Star Wars story, one that seeks to fill in some gaps either unexplored or not explored nearly as well as their potential allows. Deepening the ties and psychology within the Empire has been tried many times since the black and white view within the original film, but it has never been done as well as Andor did it, at least definitely not in live action. The fascistic nature of Andor's empire is made up of those normal people going to work every day, desensitizing themselves from the bizarre nature their job entails. Every day they go to work, they further normalize a backward system from their biased perspective. I think this is something people really need to understand. Fascism, with a lowercase f, is not a figment of magic. It's not the sole product of some cosmically evil person. Fascism is unfortunately a sort of moral illness that probably all humans could catch under specific circumstances. These circumstances are fueled by a growing fictional view of the world that is validated little by little within a population. As the status quo of morality, this Overton window becomes normalized through said validation in a homogeneous population, that next step of escalation towards an increasingly extreme belief becomes more and more sensible. This becomes a sort of cycle. The population rapidly validates itself into an ever-infectious, insane worldview that feels completely justified. It seems pretty logical to believe that the right answer lies in the majority of opinions. If everyone around me believes something, there has to be some logic to it, right? The characters we find in the Empire, Dage Ramiro and Cyril Karn, are the products of this radicalization. In the first act of Andor, we see the distinct differences between multiple populations: the indigenous of Kenari, the proletariat of Ferrix, the salariat of Priox Morlana, and the elites of Coruscant. In the beginning, all of these populations are separated. Each transition to scenes focused on one of these populations causes us to basically create a new perspective of the world because of the distinct normality the characters inhibit within their environment. During scenes on Morlana 1, whether you like it or not, Cyril is written as the protagonist. Strip the actual moral implications of Cyril's beliefs and you get a strong hero character. Someone who is extremely dedicated and willing to break corporate rules to do what he believes is the right thing that no one else really cares about. Dage Ramiro is in a similar situation. The filmmaking urges you to root for her in an environment where she appears to be in a more vulnerable state. But it's not until you see these populations encounter each other physically that you realize which perspectives are actually morally corrupt. The evil of the Empire becomes extremely obvious when the Morlana security drops down on Ferrix, or when Dage Ramiro tortures those of the proletariat without any emotional hesitation. The vague virtue of passionate dedication that these two characters have, and strong will to do what is right, is only morally valuable based on what the word right actually implies. Andor subverts the Star Wars medium by taking the political undertones of George Lucas seriously, by directly addressing them in a deeper, more realistic way, by not just telling a story about good versus evil, Jedi versus Sith. The failure of Disney to respect these political tones that were always present in the films has led to a mass misinterpretation of Star Wars by those who only see vague virtues. The Empire in Star Wars is so fantastical, so iconic in science fiction that your average fan can't possibly realize how undeniably similar the Empire is to the systems of hierarchy in our world, especially the systems of the country Star Wars originated in. The intent of George Lucas is as obvious as his literal statements of them in interviews.
You did something very interesting with Star Wars, if you think about it. The good guys are the rebels. They're using asymmetric warfare against a highly organized empire. I think we call those guys terrorists today. We call them Mujahideen, we call them Al-Qaeda.
When I did it, they were Viet Cong, and we're just a bunch of hayseeds in coonskin hats that don't know nothing.
That's right.
And it was the same thing with the Vietnamese.
Yep.
The irony of that one is, in both of those, the little guys won.
Right.
And the big, highly technical empire,
the English Empire, right?
The English
British
Empire, the American Empire,
Yep.
lost.
Yeah.
Star Wars is not just your generic anti-Nazi Germany movie. It is also very obviously, especially in the last film, anti-American imperialism. Andor takes the subtext of Star Wars and forces your average American into therapy, and hopefully some of them come out of it a little less sick.
We had ferries. But we were sleeping. I've been sleeping. I've been turning away from a truth I wanted not to face. There is a wound that won't heal at the center of the galaxy.
You might see me as a quite stingy person, someone who loves things dearly but is equally critical. This integral aspect of me has caused many arguments to the point where I've learned to suppress it among certain people or at certain times. I take entertainment, anything involving or pertaining to art, quite seriously, because to me, art in the modern world is always under continual threat. In all of these industries, there are problems of abuse, of money, of representation. While many people like to ignore these things, to be an innocent bystander to the back end of entertainment, I hope to be aware of these issues as much as I can. Now, this isn't to judge those people unless, you're one of the people who buy NBA 2K every year. You should probably fix that. But for your general consumer, I have empathy. There's just not enough time in many people's busy lives to care about everything. It's easier to just ignore it, to just go with the flow. The systems encourage it. And of course, I'm guilty of it too. I've watched Disney films in theaters quite a few times despite complaining about them. I've bought pre-orders and microtransactions while knowing the manipulation behind them. And I've played games I know I shouldn't be supporting at that time out of boredom. This is all to explain why I previously skipped out on all those Star Wars shows besides The Mandalorian. Every second, every dollar I give to Disney for a product not worth my time and not additive to the medium is increasing a number on the shareholders, the managers, the director's data sheet, telling them that they should continue on that same path. It doesn't currently matter what I would think of Obi-Wan or Book of Boba Fett. The ratings of a product, my opinion of it, only comes into question when the sales are dropping. I was skeptical of all these shows. I so too was skeptical of Andor. Now, there is a seemingly pretentious vibe that comes from asking which piece of entertainment is art and which isn't. From an outside perspective, this type of rhetoric about high and low art can be off-putting, like someone's trying to sell you a fake idea that fuels an ego and a personal bias. With that said, I've heard many perspectives on the matter, from film directors in Hollywood to amateur film analysts on YouTube to university professors, and I believe it exists, or at least that the question in of itself is very important. Recently, this debate has resurfaced in the face of advanced AI imaging technology, soon able to create illustrations indistinguishable from the human touch. I'd like to link a video from a more legitimate person that covers an important nuance in this topic better than I can, but here's the general idea that I want you to get from it. With the introduction of AI that can create works just like us, it forces us to realize that there is a difference between illustration, your general entertainment, and real art. With this epiphany, we realize that art isn't solely made to be beautiful. Art is distinctly human. It is an expression of humanity. Simply making something that is beautiful and uses the tools of art does not necessarily make it art. Like Just Right and many other video essayists, I believe Andor is entertainment, but also art. For the longest time, I've had this built-in feeling, a sense of what could be real art and what is a corporate imitation of art. Every trailer I watch, I'm looking for the trick, the catch, the manipulation. Even with Andor, I thought pretty much nothing of the trailer. It was just another Star Wars show. It's quite easy to imitate art within promotional material, but when you see the real thing, the illusion collapses. This feeling, though, I can't argue it has some objective merit to it. It's almost a defense mechanism in a world that encourages immorality and/or, no pun intended, impersonality. What I think might be most grave in the entertainment world are the people who work for big corporations like Disney. If anyone got an employment opportunity from one of these massive companies, it would be almost absurd to say no. I might like to tell people I wouldn't take a job from a company I'm completely morally opposed to, but when the right opportunity is in front of my face, I might have a completely different attitude. I don't want to speak for those who work in large TV, film, or video game companies, but it's undeniable that these people are talented. It can't be that all Disney employees don't see the glaring problems with the company they work for. There may be those who are financially obligated to stay, but try their best to insert as much artistic integrity in each project as much as possible. The products I criticize on this channel, the games or films I don't want to support, are not out of hatred for the employees. It's not that these people didn't do a good enough job, because their primary job is not to make art. It's not to please me necessarily, is to make a product that will sell. Art can be adjacent to these products, but it is secondary to the arbitrary needs of the system. Although I don't know all that Andor was meant to be an allegory for, aspects of the show do bode well as a deconstruction of the hierarchy of a modern corporation and the abusive power structures that keep its evolution safe. The nature of this artificial organism, an oxymoronic form of natural selection, is to exhaust its subjects, because it's quite easy to be tolerant when you are tired. And we've been sleeping. I was once told by a viewer arguing against the idea of boycotting that such an attempt was meaningless, because while one may have the integrity not to buy, another person will just take their place. Subsequently, as a thought experiment, we can extend this argument into the rest of our lives. We can ask everyone to know this argument to be true, an unfortunate, unchanging constant of human behavior. In this world, you can expect there to be no change in any way until external phenomena forces it to. The systems of yesterday will arise tomorrow without any hindrance by any human, no matter the nature of these systems. Any chance you may have to act in accordance with progress, to basically wish for a better world, will be crushed under the weight of one terrible assumption: that no one will follow you. To those who believe in such a pessimistic worldview, Andor is your answer.
Remember this: freedom is a pure idea. It occurs spontaneously and without instruction. Random acts of insurrection are occurring constantly throughout the galaxy. There are whole armies, battalions that have no idea that they've already enlisted in the cause. Remember that the frontier of the rebellion is everywhere, and even the smallest act of insurrection pushes our lines forward. Authority is brittle. Oppression is the mask of fear. Remember that. And know this: the day will come when all these skirmishes and battles, these moments of defiance, will have flooded the banks of the Empire's authority, and then there will be one too many. One single thing will break the siege. Remember this. Try.